Hey there, Blair Packham here from SongStudio. If you want to know more about songwriting, the creative process, the music business, all of these things, you've come to the right place. Hooks and ladders. These videos cover all those things and more. So you could like this video and all the other ones too. You could share them with your friends. You could subscribe to more videos, or you could check out our website, songstudio.ca, where you can sign up for our email list and connect with us that way.
Here's another peek at what we did at SongStudio Online last August. Hope you enjoy.
Comping vocals, if you guys aren't familiar, Lisa used the example of 10 takes. You've got 10 vocal takes, 10 performances, let's say it's 10, and it could be 20, could be 5, could be 2, whatever, but it's multiple, it's more than one. And you're choosing between one or the other, but usually, and the word comp means compiling, and you're compiling a take, a master take, from the choices that you have. So you might take the first line from take 3, and then the second line from take 1, and the third line from take 10, etc., depending. Or you might think, you know what, take 5 was really happening, and go with the bulk of that. And then, when you hit the bridge, maybe you need something that's, more to the point or whatever. But that's comping. And that went on even when we were recording to 2-inch tape. That isn't a phenomenon of the digital recording world, though it's, now it's much more of a standard way of working. With 2-inch tape, you didn't always do comp vocals, and they were harder to do. But now it's super easy to do. And everybody does it, so don't tell me that it's dishonest, because it's not.
Exactly. I know. Some people that I work with, especially the youth, 17, 18-year-old, who the ones that I'm working with, quite honestly, they're Jedi. They're gifted. Like, they get in the booth and they open their mouth and I'm like, holy smokes, that is like nailed. Right, totally perfect pitch and beautifully phrased. And because they just have been doing this since they were like 8, and they're super like in their body and in their vibe. However, I'm like, okay, great, let's do a couple more takes. And then, like you say, you might find all of take 2 was pretty great. There's only a couple little moments, so we just like plug in a couple words or end of phrases. But it is, it's a challenge to not. It's like the sweet spot between doing enough that you have enough to work with and not overkill, because then you can sort of, becomes a little bit stayed, and the person doesn't really know what you're looking for. Sometimes the producer doesn't really know what we're looking for. We're just kind of throwing the spaghetti at the wall and seeing what the singer's capable of. I've also had circumstances where the singer will be, we'll do 4 or 5 takes, and then I'll make a comp, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, can you send me this, because the session's over and they're going to come back for another session, another point. And just so for all the singers, like, some of you may already know this, that everything affects you in your day. How much sleep you had, how much water you had, are you hungry, did you eat, what did you eat, how's your body feeling, how's your breathing, like all these factors play a role. And even though I have this awesome microphone and setup that is like consistent, and I can pretty much have someone come back the next day and land some other takes, but I mean, there's proximity. How close am I to the mic? And if I'm back here, or if I'm moving a bit more, or I didn't sleep well, or maybe I ate. So it's so tricky with vocals. It's probably one of the, and be reassured, all of you, that all I heard, the Dua Lipa came up, and all of the top artists are comping their vocals. Like, it's very rare that somebody has a full take. And once you do that, the cool thing is, it's sort of like study. It's sort of like improvement study opportunity, because you get this comp that's like, oh, this is the best of the best. Awesome. Now I can actually rehearse with that. So when I go to perform live, I've got this lovely shaped, I've tried all these different phrasings, and I know how long I want to hold the end of that. I want to dance off the end of that phrase. I don't want to do anything with that one. I want to punch this one out. I want to hold this one back. So it's very useful, even just as an exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of things to say. One is back in the olden days, when Belinda Carlisle was famous, she was an uneven singer in the studio, and she also apparently was not always pleasant to be around. And
Oh,
so, an assistant engineer at one of her sessions, put together a comp.
uh-oh.
How they did it.
Oh God.
Yeah, how they did it in those days, they had two 24-track machines synced up, and so they saved one of them just for the vocals. So you'd have a sync track and then a buffer track, and then you'd have 22 more tracks left over. So she did 22 takes onto that second machine, and he took all of the worst parts and
Oh,
made
that's cruel.
comp vocal, and then made a cassette, and then circulated it. So yeah, it can work against you as well. Um, but but moving on from the that kind of stuff. Oh, I know. The other thing I wanted to say was for those people who feel like, well, that's all artificial. It's like you're singing into a microphone, which into a computer. It's all artificial. I mean, the only part that's not artificial is you. So you've got to bring your A game and your emotions to it. But
The emotion, that's the key word right there. Because the performance could be nailing it. You think it's nailing it. Oh, there's my lighting.
oh,
Thanks.
there you go. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But if it's devoid of like, I've nailed that vocal, but if it's devoid of that very present, it's a presence and bringing the emotional side to it, even if it is a celebratory, joyful song, whatever that is, yeah, if that's not there, it's
Right.
all the technology in the world is not going to like
Yeah.
manifest that.
Technology doesn't ultimately matter except in capturing something, but the thing you're trying to capture is still the elusive thing.
100%.
Now, you work with youth a lot, and what I've observed when I work with youth is this phenomenon. This has been a number of years now, and I'm curious about your reaction to it and what you think of it, or if you've even noticed it. But I bet you have. The singer-songwriter accent.
Oh
The
boy.
accent that it kites like a knife. I love you. It cuts like a knife. I love you. But the vowels are all sort of twisted. And if it was one singer and that was their style, I would think fantastic. But if it's 100 million singers singing like that, I think, well, first of all, where does that come from, and why do they feel that that's somehow more meaningful? And is it? And I think it may be that it's more meaningful to the listener. Somehow the listener's drawn to this transformation of language. What do you think?
Again, I just want to believe them. I want the true human that's in there. And it's true that even various decades, I mean, a lot of people, when Alanis Morissette came out, a lot of people, I played in a band with the lead singer who was really sounding like imitationally, right? And again, we do imitate our heroes to try to find ourselves. Having said that, the technique I use is I ask them to speak it. And so if they do something like, I don't know what is that American, or maybe it's like a British, or there's just like the different, it's affectations, and they're brought up listening to music that they grow to love, and there's something they love about it, but they're not Jessie Reyez. Like Jessie Reyez, I think comes by it honestly. She's Latina. She speaks Spanish, and it's also like literally the formation of your oral cavity, right? Like your cheekbones and the inside, your whole body shapes your sound, which affects your vowels. If it's an affectation that you're putting on because you've heard your pop heroes do it, it smells fishy. It doesn't feel believable. So what I do is I say, okay, so how would you say that? So I'll just use a fictitious name here. Julie, how do you say that? So if they've sung something like, how can I say, like something like, let's say, I'm like, how do you say that? Oh, how can I say? Right. Okay. So you're born and raised in Toronto. How can I say? You're singing it like, how can I say? Can you try to sing it how you would speak it? So we go from like, how can I say? How can I say? How can I say? How? And I start sort of segue them from speaking it literally to fully singing it. And it's generally a bit of a revelation for them. They don't even know they're doing it.
That was my experience. I had a class and 3 singers in a row. They were all females, but it's not limited to females. But they're all women, and 3 of them in a row sang like that. And I said after the third one, I said they were just doing their assignments. So, the performance aspect was peripheral, really. But I said, I got to ask you guys, where does that come from? And they're like, what? And I said, that accent. And they were like, what? What accent? and I said, you're singing, and that's where that line it kites like a knife, and that's where it came from. I actually wrote that down, and I said, okay, sing me the chorus, and so she did, and I said, you sang it kites like a knife, and she said, I did not. And I said, sing it again. So she sang it again, and then she started smiling, and she went, oh my God. She had no idea. And the class, they laughed, not at her. They're a good bunch of people, they weren't laughing at each other, but they were laughing because it's like, because she didn't know. She didn't even notice. And, I like the way Mick Jagger sings, for instance, but it's full on affected,
Yeah. I mean, the Rolling Stones borrowed from the blues. Like
hugely, of course.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is there are some affectations that I don't mind, but that particular singer-songwriter thing, that bugs me. I did put in the chat, by the way, I put a YouTube video of this woman who is telling you how to do it, really making fun of it at the same time.
Okay. I wanted to give you another example because it is true that we hear a lot of female vocalists doing that. There's a male vocalist that I taught how to basically play instruments, sing, and write songs, and then he got signed to Warner, Alex Frew, no relation to the other Frew, and so he was studying music with me at like 10 or 11 years old. By the time he was 13 or 14, and he'd never written a poem or a song or anything, but I just got this feeling he's just like a deep young person, very sort of quiet and inner. And I said, have you ever written poetry? No, I haven't. And I was like, do you want to try to write some songs? Well, then as he's learning how to put melody over his chords and explore ideas and feelings, he falls in love with Ed Sheeran's music. And so he's completely he comes in and he's learned guitar riffs and he's starting to sing like Ed Sheeran, who is from the UK. And so I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be gentle with him because I know he's just starting out. I don't want to crush his enthusiasm. So when we started recording him, same thing. He didn't hear what I was talking about. I was like, you don't have to shape your vowels like Ed Sheeran because he's Ed Sheeran and you're you. And so it took a long time. He was still, there would be, like you said, the person standing there and you ask them to do it again and they don't hear it. That's when I say, speak that line. How do you say that word? How do you pronounce that vowel? And then they speak it and aha, there it is, right? And so I think all that work was worth it because by the time he was 17, he had a development deal and then he was working with Justin Abbott because I can't take him to the highest level as a guitarist. I'm a pretty basic, mediocre guitar player. And then he got his development deal, which when he finished high school turned into a full deal. So I know there's been some changes at Warner, so I don't know if what's going on there, but anyway, yeah.
Right, well, that's still a success story no matter what. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
Thanks for taking a glimpse with us inside the SongStudio workshop from last August. Stay tuned for more.